Start by saying I'm a native of Arkansas. I grew up over in Boone County in a little community known as Everton, a little mining town. They mine sand to make glass out of. And I first started to school down at Russellville at Arkansas Tech. I had a year and a half of school down there before I entered the military service for World War II. I was a radio operator on a B-29 airplane that in military service we flew off Guam in the Southwest Pacific. After the military service was over, I came here to the university, got married the spring that I got out of service in 1946, and came here to Fayetteville and completed a degree in agriculture, general agriculture, in 1948. At that point, I still had some time on the GI Bill, so I was encouraged to go to graduate school and made application at several places, and eventually chose to go over to Oklahoma State. At that time it was Oklahoma A&M College, they called it. I did a master's degree in what was known as animal breeding, the mating of animals and improvement of animals, of farm animals. It would be the orientation. Then I came back to, I was offered the opportunity to come back on a job here at Fayetteville, and went to work in 1950 in the Animal Science Department as I had got my master's degree and taken some more coursework, but I needed some math courses before I went ahead and worked on a PhD. So I had an opportunity to take the job here at Fayetteville and work off one course a semester and take the math courses that I needed as prerequisites to some other work that I would do on a PhD. So I came back and did that, and went back in 53 and 54 and completed my coursework for the PhD. And I came back and finished up my dissertation after I came back, and was awarded a PhD in population genetics, would be the area of expertise in 1956. The research that I was doing was with beef cattle, and there had not been much research on the improvement of beef cattle prior to World War II. There just were probably a total of 40 or 50 papers that had been published up until that time. So it was pretty easy to know all the work that had been done and be familiar with it. So as a part of a regional project. We were taking something like 200 measurements on each animal, and some of them repeated measurements more than once. So I had a tremendous mass of data that I had collected in the years prior to 1957, and a man had come to the university in 1940 and started a study that had some records that also were useful to me. So I had a horrible, maybe that's not quite the right word, but a mountain of data. In 1957, I had two girls working on a Monroe calculator to do these problems. Do you know what a Monroe calculator is?
Please don't.
Well, it's a mechanical calculator. It's an electric calculator. I mean, works off electricity, so it works pretty fast in terms of like an adding machine, sort of. So I had two girls working on that. In order to the problems that we were solving were required us to invert a matrix of 5 by 5 or a 6 by 6. Are you acquainted with matrix manipulation? Okay, we were doing that on Monroe calculators, and each girl had to do the problem separately and independently, and then the answers had to check. That was the way well, you can imagine how slow that was. We found out that there were some other equipment on the market that might allow us to manipulate numbers a little faster, so we began to investigate that. Dr. Gifford was the head of our department. He was very interested in it. And so we got a salesman came and made a presentation to us, and I went to Dallas and looked at what the possibilities were for this equipment. It looked like we might be able to use it, so we came back and wrote an order for it, and I think it was a $50,000-$60,000 piece of equipment, maybe. And the order was turned down. Now why, we don't know, but I suspect that they thought that Cowboy didn't need, that sort of equipment. But anyway, be that as it may, we had tried to buy it out of what was called hard money at that time, appropriated money. So that the people that had to approve that were different than the people that had to approve some money that we got from working on this regional project. That means 15 southern states comprise a region, and we was one of the states in the region, and we got some money for that, and it took a different set of people to approve that. So we found out that this G15D computer was available and could be leased. And so by leasing this equipment, this made it a different proposition. So we leased this piece of equipment, and for a lease payment and a maintenance fee, we were able to do it. So if you can't skin a cat one way, well, you skin them another. You learn to do that. going to get along in the university business, but anyway, that's how we did it. And so we leased a G15D computer. Now, this is a picture of this was a newspaper article that was and that's a copy of it. I let all my good. Now this is another picture of it. Show you a little bit of the inside of it. And so we leased that piece of equipment. That was in 1957. I was told by the head salesman of IBM equipment about, it seemed to me like 6 months or so after we got this equipment, they were able to put an IBM 650 on campus for everybody to use, campus-wide. The head salesman for IBM who did that told me that they never would have gotten a foot in the door with the university if we hadn't done this. I was told that that was the first computer in the state, and the second one was another one of those computers that the Army engineers had. They got it a month or two later than we got this. So that's the that's the story of how we come to have it. Now, when we ordered it, when we knew that we was going to get it and all, I went to California to the factory, spent 3 weeks in Santa Monica, California, learning to operate and learning to program and so on. The first day I went to programming class while I was behind about halfway through the period because they began to talk about the numbering systems that they operated in. This computer operated in 3 number systems. Data, of course, was in up to the base 10. It operated on the computer on the binary. It took a hexadecimal system, which was to the base 16, to be able to tie those two together. It was pretty complicated to program. If you did 100 instructions, you'd done a big day's work. So it as a machine goes, you can see that it's mostly wires and vacuum tubes. It was totally a vacuum tube. The memory of this machine is on a magnetic drum that turned, a spinning magnetic drum, 29 channels around that would hold, what is it, 1,024, 28, whatever that 24. That number is. That was a memory. This allowed you to, well, there's 3 input. You can input through typewriter. There's an input through paper tape, punch paper tape. And then there was an input through IBM key punch machine, you know, the old cards, IBM cards that you punch cards on. Have you seen those machines? Well, it was one of those machines was wired, adapted, so that you could pass those cards through that machine, and they would enter the data that was on the card into the machine. So you had three inputs. The punch paper tape I used primarily for programs. The typewriter for immediate operation in the entry of data through the key punch. That's basically the way we used it. Those key punches, I think it was 22 cards a minute would go through there. So it was a very slow process in terms of what you're used to thinking of. But anyway, when you didn't have any, it was a start. Okay, that's kind of what it was. This machine allowed us to, well, we were working primarily mixed regression programs. You know what mixed regressions are? Multivariate analysis.
No.
Those kind of things. Okay. Anyway, it requires you to invert a matrix, and they handle a 29 by 29 matrix, 29 unknowns you could work with. We'd been working with 5 or 6 with a calculator. So the first thing this did was to expand our thinking. Instead of being limited to problems with just 5 or 6 variables, now we could work on problems that had 29 variables as a maximum. And that's what we did. We expanded. We also, of course, found that it was a greater degree of accuracy than these 2 girls working independently of one another. So the 2 big things that we got then was expanding our thinking processes and increased accuracy. Okay, so that was the advantage. We I don't know, what does this say? 50 a work of 50 girls and 50 calculators. That who knows? That was a good round figure that would impress somebody. So that's how that come to be. Now then, let's see what. Well, we continued to operate this as long as we could do it cheaper than we could go to the machine across campus that everybody else was using. And about 5 years, I think we operated about 5 years. Now, what I had to do, what I did personally, I had another job. It was more than a day job. It was I ran a supervised the operation of a cattle ranch, 3,100 acre cattle ranch, and about 800 purebred cattle out 10 miles out in the country. I had a foreman, of course, that was out there running it, and I had a crew of men that worked for him, but these were the animals that we were doing research with. So I also was involved in research at 4 or 5 other locations in the state. So pretty soon I had to decide whether I was going to be a computer jock or whether I was going to remain as an animal scientist the way I was trained. Well, I found out that I could train a girl to take one of these programs. I could say, you know, here's the problem that I want to solve, and here's the program, and hand her a program that she could put on this machine here, and then she could tend the machine and with a little oversight and building a little confidence in her, I could get what I wanted out of it that way. So I went back to being a cowboy scientist, so to speak. So that's the story of the first computer and I had a great career. I worked for the university 40 years, wound up as a university professor emeritus, and well, you can see some of the plaques that there that.
Oh yes, they are. I did notice that that's.
Arkansas Hall of Fame Agriculture. That's distinguished graduate of both
Can you pan this?
University of Arkansas and Oklahoma State. American Society of Animal Science. Several of these plaques, Distinguished Service Award from American Society of Animal Science. One from the State Cattlemen Association, this from American Polled Herald Association. I did consulting with, I think I counted 8 different breeds of beef cattle. And I did other consulting, Bank of Mexico, and that one of those is. Prison system and on inspection teams at different state experiment stations and things like that. So I had a wide ranging and very interesting career, but we did the first application of multivariate analysis to defining the size and shape of beef cattle. That would be some of the basic science that I did. So that's kind of the story. I don't know if we have some questions or not.
Any interesting anecdotes that you'd like to talk about after your when you finished?
Well, somewhere I've told this before that when they were unloading this, it was in a big crate, of course, and about the size of a big refrigerator. So the delivery people that brought it were handling it a little rougher than I thought it ought to be, so we cautioned them to be careful. That was fragile. Oh, they say, oh, Doc, we've handled many of these refrigerators, don't worry about it. So, you know.
Yes.
So, I don't know. But I'm sure that there was people that wondered what
in the earth
cowboys were doing with some equipment like that was, and really they didn't. I think that some people had a little trouble accepting it, maybe, you know. But when I came back from California, a fellow out of the Dallas office, the closest office of this company was in Dallas, and he came up and spent a week with me and held my hand like, you know, they do, and to get things started, and helped me get started. But he also held a programming school for anybody that was on campus that was interested. Now we had, I guess 25 or 30 people across campus that was in it, so it wasn't, a few people, there was a few people interested enough in it that we gave them some time, or some time was made available to them, so, but the other campus-wide machine came on location soon enough that there really wasn't much of that went on. But So I guess the first programming school would be associated with this too, so I don't know. Yeah, I've forgotten everything I knew about programming because that's the kind of stuff, if you don't use it every day, why, it changes till you can't.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true for us. I mean,
Is it still that way? Is it still that way?
oh yes. I mean, if we leave, for example, right now at the university, if we don't use something that we learned in a class like 3 months ago,
Yeah.
it just
Oh,
goes.
it's already gone.
Yes.
Well, of course, I depended on other people to do my secretarial work and other things, and when I retired, well, I had, get my own machine and start doing it myself. And I had quite a struggle to get on top of it, but still, just recently I had a motherboard take out on me, and so I had to replace that and several of the little programs that I was using. I changed from Windows XP on that machine to Windows Vista on this machine. And well, for example, I'm diabetic, and I use a little program to summarize all my blood readings, and it wouldn't work on the Vista, so I had to get it to where it would go. And I had 4 or 5 little programs like that. So it's still
there.
Still changes.
Back in the 60s, when you were heavily involved with stuff like this, even in the 50s, did you have any idea that technology would change so much now that you're looking back to those days?
Well, maybe by the 60s we'd gotten a little vision. I'd say in the 50s we did. But say by the 60s, well, let's say, I don't know of a computer on the campus of any university prior to 50. Now I believe the University of Illinois had a monster of something of that kind.
At Arkansas?
No, at the University of Illinois. And that's the only one I know of in the whole country. See, computers came out in World War II, and it was along in the 50s then, the early 50s, that they began to be computers on campuses. So by 60, I think you begin to get an idea that here this was going to take off. Yeah. But this thing I described about going from thinking in terms of 4 or 5 equations and 4 or 5 unknowns to 29. Well, this sort of expansion of thought had, well, I'd say by the 60, it had begun to occur in the minds of at least the forward-thinking people on campus.
Looking ahead, do you expect technology to keep expanding in this field, like computing, in the years to come? Do you think that's possible?
Well, I have a peculiar viewpoint about that. Can I describe it like this, that the good Lord's got all this knowledge. He has all the knowledge. And if you think about it being in a box here, and he's got control of it, once in a while he'll raise a corner and let an idea out. Now you wonder why. Why does that idea come along when it does? Why did the discovery of penicillin come you know, was made back in the 20s, but really lie dormant until World War II. Why the ideas of atomic energy come along when they did? Why didn't they come along back before? Well, if you go back and study the history of the Industrial Revolution and the technology like that, that associated with that, that's just my kind of peculiar interpretation of how these ideas come along. So it seems that they come along in times of stress. Wartime stress is an example, but the Industrial Revolution came along because Europe ran out of wood. They heated, their heating and everything was on the basis of wood. Well, they cut all the trees down and they didn't have a source to keep them warm. What did they do? They learned to burn coal. They began to dig coal. That's how come coal mining began to be. And then what did that lead to? That led to making steel. And what did that lead to? Well, it led to the steam engine and trains and boats and things. Well, these things were around generations before, but a time of stress brought them out. Now, like I say, it might be a war. World War II was tremendous in the things that came along in World War II. For example, they learned how to squeeze the fat out of soybeans and cottonseed in World War II in order to make explosives, make munitions. Now, what effect did that have on? Are you a country boy?
No.
No. Well, you wouldn't think about that having anything to do with agriculture or the things in agriculture, but when World War II was over, up until World War II, the source of fat was animal fat, was lard. It was rendered from the fat of pigs and the fat of cattle and so forth. These animal fats were at World War II, after World War II, they substituted this fat that was coming out of soybeans and cottonseed for the animal fat. Well, animal fat, the price of it went just way down here. And so what effect did that have? It changed the type of hogs from a fat type to a long, lean type of hog. Changed the type of cattle from the short, compact, easy to fatten kind of cattle to a more taller ranger kind. It changed the type of, it changed the way that milk was bought. From being, prior to World War II, it was bought on the basis of fat percentage. And butter fat was skimmed from milk to, so they bought milk on the basis of butterfat content. When this surplus of fat came along, they began to buy milk on the basis of weight, so much 100 weight. What this caused was, all across the South, the milk was produced by Jersey cows, small yellow Jersey cow. And the reason was that the fat percentage of their milk was anywhere about 4, 5, 6%. Well, that was a detriment. That much fat you didn't need. So they changed to Holstein cows whose fat percentage of their milk's 3, 4%, and they give lots more milk, a lot more volume of milk, a lot more weight per day. So you wouldn't think about this change in technology of fat, squeezing fat out of soybean, causing a change of the kind of cow, but you can't hardly find a Jersey cow in all the South now. So when you talk about this development of technology, why it's all interrelated, and I think that there has to be a time of stress of some sort to cause it to happen.
That's a good insight. That's a very good insight.
That's my lecture on technology.
Can you think of any other questions? No, I think this is it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mr. Brown. Thank you so much.
How are you going to use this?
Well, what we will do is get this off to a computer, and then from the computer burn it to DVDs. If you'd like a copy,
Sure.
then we can combine